Take a deep breath and let your mind drift backward through the layers of time, past centuries and millennia, past the rise and fall of civilizations, past the age of ice and fire, until you reach a moment 252 million years ago, when our planet was learning how to dream new dreams. The earth beneath your feet would feel different then, warmer, more restless. Imagine the ground itself as a living thing, breathing and shifting. The continents you know today were pressed together into one massive landmass called Pangaea, a supercontinent that stretched from pole to pole like a sleeping giant. The climate was harsh and unforgiving, with vast deserts spreading across the interior, while monsoons battered the coastlines with the fury of a world still finding its rhythm. In this alien landscape, life was stirring with new possibilities. The Great Dying, the most devastating extinction event our planet had ever known, had recently swept away 90% of all living things. Yet from this devastation came opportunity, like flowers blooming after a wildfire. The survivors were tough, adaptable creatures, and among them were small lizard-like reptiles that carried within their genes the blueprint for something magnificent. You can picture these early reptiles, no larger than house cats, scurrying through the undergrowth of primitive forests. Their scales caught the light of a sun that seemed brighter then, their hearts beating with the same steady rhythm as yours does now. These were the archosaurs, the ruling reptiles, though they didn't know they were destined to rule anything. They were simply trying to survive in a world that was both ending and beginning. The forests they moved through were unlike any you might walk through today. Instead of flowers, they were only ferns and conifers, creating a green world painted in shades of emerald and jade. The air was thick and humid, filled with the songs of insects and the rustle of strange plants. No grass carpeted the ground. Grass was still millions of years away from its first appearance. Instead, the earth was covered in mosses and ferns that created a soft, spongy floor beneath countless small feet. As you breathe slowly and deeply, imagine the rhythm of those ancient days. The seasons came and went, but they were different seasons. Longer, more extreme, shaped by the strange geography of a world where all land was connected. Some of these early archosaurs began to change generation by generation as the earth itself was changing around them. Their legs grew longer and stronger, positioning themselves more directly beneath their bodies rather than sprawling out to the sides like modern lizards. This was no accident. This was evolution responding to opportunity, shaping bodies for speed and endurance. Their skulls elongated, their teeth specialized, their posture became more upright. They were becoming something new, something that had never existed before. The transition was so gradual, you could have watched for a lifetime and barely noticed the changes. But across thousands of lifetimes, across hundreds of thousands of years, these small reptiles were transforming into the first dinosaurs. The word dinosaur means terrible lizard, but there was nothing terrible about these early pioneers. They were curious, adaptable, remarkably successful in finding their place in a world that was constantly shifting. Picture Eoraptor, one of the earliest dinosaurs we know of, running through the shadows of ancient forests in what would day become Argentina. About the size of a small dog, with grasping hands and sharp teeth, Eoraptor was both predator and prey, hunter and hunted. Its name means dawn thief, and in many ways it was stealing something precious. It was stealing the future, claiming it for its descendants. The climate during these early days was a living thing, pulsing with heat and humidity. There were no ice caps at the poles, no frozen landscapes anywhere on Earth. The planet was like a greenhouse, warm and wet, perfect for the explosion of life that was about to unfold. The carbon dioxide in the atmosphere was much higher than today, creating this hothouse effect and feeding the plants that would feed the herbivores, that would feed the carnivores in an endless, beautiful cycle of existence. Volcanic activity was intense during this period, with massive eruptions reshaping the landscape and filling the sky with ash and gas. But even this violence was creative, returning nutrients to the soil and creating new islands and mountain ranges where life could experiment with new forms. The earth was young and wild, untamed and full of possibility. As these first dinosaurs spread across Pangaea, they began to diversify in ways that would have seemed miraculous to any observer. Some remained small and quick, darting through the underbrush like living shadows. Others grew larger, their bodies adapting to new diets and new ways of life. The plant-eaters developed longer necks to reach higher vegetation, while the meat-eaters refined their hunting strategies, becoming more efficient predators. The night sky above these ancient scenes was different too. The stars were in different positions, the moon appeared larger and closer, and the days were shorter, only about 23 hours long. Yet, under this alien sky, something familiar was happening. Parents were caring for their young. Creatures were competing and cooperating. Life was finding ways to flourish despite every challenge the planet could offer. In the quiet spaces between your heartbeats, you can almost hear the echo of those first dinosaur calls across the ancient landscape. They were claiming their territory, calling to their mates, warning off rivals, and teaching their young the secrets of survival. These sounds had never been heard before on Earth, and they would continue for the next 160 million years, becoming the dominant chorus of our planet's middle age. The stage was set for one of the most remarkable chapters in the history of life. These small, seemingly unremarkable reptiles carried within them the genetic keys to unlock forms of beauty and power that would make them the rulers of land, sea, and eventually sky. But that transformation was still to come, waiting in the warm, humid future like a promise whispered on the wind. As the Triassic period settled into its rhythm, and these early dinosaurs found their footing in their strange new world, something wonderful was beginning to stir, the first hints of the giants that would soon shake the very ground beneath their feet.
Let your breath slow and deepen as we drift forward through time's gentle current, from that ancient Triassic world into the Jurassic period, about 200 million years ago. The Earth has transformed once more, becoming a paradise of green abundance that would take your breath away. The harsh deserts of Pangaea are giving way to something magnificent, a world so lush and tropical that every breath of air is thick with the perfume of growing things. Imagine walking through this Jurassic garden. The ground beneath your feet is soft with fallen leaves and the gentle decay that feeds new life. Towering above you are forests of conifers reaching heights that seem to brush against the clouds themselves. Ferns unfurl like giant umbrellas, some growing as tall as modern trees, their fronds creating a green canopy that filters the warm sunlight into dancing patterns of gold and emerald. The climate is a gardener's dream, warm, humid, with no ice anywhere on the planet. Carbon dioxide levels are much higher than they are in your time, creating a greenhouse effect that bathes the entire world in gentle warmth. There are no seasons as you know them, no harsh winters to endure. Instead, there are only subtle variations in this eternal spring, where growing seasons stretch endlessly and life explodes into forms of beauty and grandeur that seem almost impossible. In this paradise, something extraordinary is happening. Those small dinosaurs from the Triassic are growing, not just individually, but as evolutionary lineages, their bodies responding to the abundant food and perfect climate by reaching toward sizes that dwarf anything alive in your modern world. This is the age of the sauropods, the long-necked giants whose very existence seems to challenge the laws of physics. Feel the ground trembling gently beneath your feet as Diplodocus approaches. This creature stretches nearly 90 feet from nose to tail, longer than 3 school buses placed end to end. Yet its movements are surprisingly graceful. Its neck, impossibly long and flexible, sways like a living crane as it browses among the treetops. Each step is deliberate and measured, the footfall of a creature that knows it owns this world through sheer presence rather than aggression. But Diplodocus is not alone in this garden of giants. Picture Brontosaurus, whose name means thunder lizard, moving through the misty morning like a living mountain. Its feet, each the size of a dinner table, press into the soft earth with a sound like distant thunder. Despite its enormous bulk, perhaps 40 tons or more, there is something almost meditative about its movements, as if it carries the weight of the world with infinite patience and grace. The secret to their size lies all around them in this verdant paradise. The plants of the Jurassic are unlike anything in your modern world. Cycads, with their palm-like fronds, create forests of prehistoric beauty. Ginkgo trees, which still exist in your time as living fossils, spread their fan-shaped leaves in golden canopies. Most importantly, the conifers, the pine-like evergreens, grow to tremendous heights, creating vertical forests that reach toward the sky like green cathedrals. These plants are rich in nutrients, constantly growing in the warm, humid climate. There is no grass yet, no flowers, but there is abundance beyond measure. The sauropods have evolved the perfect bodies to harvest this aerial garden. Their long necks, supported by lightweight, air-filled bones, allow them to browse at heights no other creatures can reach. They are living skyscrapers, their heads moving through the canopy like the tips of enormous cranes. Watch as a herd of Camarasaurus moves through a grove of ancient conifers. Each animal weighs as much as 4 elephants, yet they move with surprising coordination, their long necks weaving in and out among the branches like a slow-motion dance. The sound of their feeding is like a gentle rain, the constant rustle of needles and small branches being stripped from trees, the soft rumble of massive digestive systems processing tons of plant matter. Their size is not just about reaching high food sources. In this warm world without seasons, the giants have discovered something profound about survival. That sometimes the best defense is simply being too large to threaten. A full-grown brachiosaurus, standing 50 feet tall with its head held high, is beyond the reach of even the largest predators. Its size is its sanctuary, its bulk, its peace. The physiology of these giants is a marvel that would astound any engineer. Their hearts, massive 4-chambered pumps, work constantly to push blood up those incredibly long necks to brains that may be 40 feet above the ground. Their necks contain as many as 19 vertebrae, each one a masterpiece of natural architecture, strong enough to support tremendous weight, yet light enough to be lifted and moved with grace. But perhaps most remarkable of all is how these giants live together. As you watch a mixed herd moving through the Jurassic landscape, you see cooperation on a scale that takes your breath away. Different species braze at different levels, some keeping their heads low among the ferns and smaller trees, others reaching to the very top of the canopy. There is no competition here, only a gentle sharing of abundance. The young stay close to their parents, learning the ancient rhythms of this peaceful life. Baby Apatosaurus, though small compared to their parents, are still the size of large dogs when they hatch. They grow quickly in this rich environment, adding tons of weight each year as they stretch toward their full adult size. The sight of a mother Apatosaurus walking slowly with her half-grown offspring is one of quiet majesty, a family portrait painted on a canvas of green abundance. The very air they breathe is different from yours. Richer in carbon dioxide, it feeds the plants that feed them in an endless cycle of growth and consumption, death and renewal. The oxygen levels are slightly lower than in your time, but in this warm, humid world, life has adapted perfectly to these conditions. Every breath they take connects them to the vast respiratory system of the planet itself. In the quiet pools and slow rivers of this Jurassic world, other giants are stirring. Massive crocodiles, some over 40 feet long, bask in the warm shallows. In the oceans, marine reptiles like Leedzictus, a filter-feeding fish longer than a modern blue whale, cruise through waters teeming with life. The entire planet seems to be experimenting with size, pushing the boundaries of how large living things can become. As evening settles over this ancient paradise, the giants continue their eternal brazing.
The air fills with the soft sounds of their feeding, the gentle creak of massive necks moving, the distant rumble of contentment from creatures so large they seem more like geological features than living animals. Their breathing becomes the rhythm of the world itself, slow, deep, peaceful. The stars emerging in the Jurassic sky look down upon a world at peace, where size brings not aggression, but serenity, where abundance allows for gentleness on an enormous scale. These giants are writing the first chapters of dinosaur dominance, proving that sometimes the most successful strategy for ruling the Earth is simply to grow so large that conflict becomes unnecessary. Yet in the shadows between the massive feet of these gentle titans, smaller dinosaurs are stirring with their own ambitions, and their story is about to unfold in ways both beautiful and fierce.
The family life of these herbivores reveals intelligence and emotional complexity that would seem familiar to any parent. Maiasaura, whose name means good mother lizard, builds elaborate nests in colonial rookeries, creating communities of dozens of families, all raising their young together. The adults take turns standing guard while others forage, sharing the responsibilities of protection and childcare in ways that speak to deep social bonds and cooperative intelligence. Baby hadrosaurs hatch with eyes wide open and legs ready to run, but they remain in their nests for weeks while their parents bring them food and teach them the essential skills of survival. The sight of an adult Maiasaura gently carrying fresh vegetation to its offspring, or using its body to shield them from the hot midday sun, reveals a tenderness that bridges the vast gulf of time between their world and yours. But not all relationships in this ancient ecosystem are about predator and prey. Some of the most fascinating discoveries in paleontology reveal unexpected partnerships that challenge our assumptions about dinosaur behavior. Small, agile dinosaurs called Compsognathus often lived alongside the giants, possibly picking parasites from their skin, in relationships similar to those between modern oxpeckers and African buffalo. These tiny dinosaurs, no larger than chickens, possessed remarkable intelligence packed into their small skulls. They were the problem solvers of their world, using tools, working in coordinated groups, and displaying behaviors that suggest complex social structures. Watching them dart between the feet of enormous sauropods, their movements quick and purposeful, you see the ancestors of some of the most intelligent creatures that would ever walk the earth. The Cretaceous period, following the Jurassic, brings even more sophisticated examples of dinosaur intelligence and social behavior. Triceratops, with its magnificent three-horned skull and enormous bony frill, represents the pinnacle of herbivore defensive evolution. But recent discoveries suggest these creatures were far more than mobile fortresses. They were caring parents and complex social beings. Fossil evidence reveals that Triceratops lived in large herds, with adults forming protective circles around their young when threatened. Their frills, once thought to be purely defensive, were likely also used for display and communication, flashing with colors and patterns that conveyed information about age, health, and social status. They were living billboards, advertising their fitness and intentions to both rivals and potential mates. Among the predators of the Cretaceous period, Tyrannosaurus rex stands as perhaps the most perfectly adapted hunter ever to walk the earth. But the real T-Rex was far different from the clumsy monster often portrayed in popular culture. This was a precision instrument of predation, with keen intelligence, excellent vision, extraordinary hearing, and a sense of smell that could detect carrion from miles away. Recent research suggests that T-Rex was as much a caring parent as it was a fearsome predator. Evidence of adults bringing food to their young, protecting them from rivals, and teaching them hunting techniques reveals a creature capable of complex emotional bonds. The terrible lizard king had a tender side, expressing affection and devotion that spans the millions of years between their world and yours. As the Mesozoic night deepens, predators and prey alike settle into the rhythms of sleep and rest that connect all living things across time. The hunters dream their hunting dreams, while the herbivores rest in the security of their herds, always alert for danger, but finding peace in the presence of their families and communities. In the gentle darkness, with only the soft sounds of nocturnal creatures stirring in the undergrowth, you can sense the profound truth that emerges from these ancient relationships. Survival was never just about strength or savagery, but about intelligence, cooperation, and the bonds that connect individuals to their communities and their environment. The Mesozoic world was a place of breathtaking beauty and complex relationships, where creatures great and small found their place in the endless dance of life and death, predator and prey, parent and child. It was a world on the verge of discovering something even more remarkable, the conquest of the sky itself, and the evolutionary innovations that would echo through time to reach your own modern world. As these ancient ecosystems settled into their nighttime rhythms, small dinosaurs with strange new features were beginning to experiment with possibilities that would literally lift them above the terrestrial struggles of their earthbound kin, carrying them toward a revolution that would change the very definition of what it meant to be a dinosaur.
As twilight settles over the Mesozoic world, let your breathing slow to match the rhythm of creatures moving through shadows that stretch like fingers across the ancient landscape. The age of giants continues, but now we turn our attention to the smaller players in this grand drama, the hunters and the hunted, the clever and the wise, the predators and protectors who inhabited the spaces between the massive feet of the sauropods. In the dappled light filtering through towering conifers, something moves with liquid grace. Allosaurus, the most successful predator of the Jurassic, steps carefully through the undergrowth, each footfall placed with the precision of a dancer. At 28 feet long and weighing nearly 2 tons, this is no lumbering monster from a nightmare, but rather a living masterpiece of evolutionary engineering, powerful yet elegant, fierce yet surprisingly intelligent. Watch as this magnificent hunter pauses at the edge of a clearing, its head tilted slightly as it processes information through senses far more acute than your own. Those eyes, large and forward-facing like a hawk's, can detect the slightest movement across vast distances.
Its nostrils, positioned high on its skull, sample the air like a wine connoisseur tasting vintage aromas, reading stories written in chemical traces that drift on the warm breeze. But what might surprise you most about Allosaurus is not its size or strength, but its patience. This is not a mindless killing machine, but a thoughtful strategist. It watches a herd of Camptosaurus browsing in the distance, not with immediate hunger, but with the calculating intelligence of a creature that understands timing, opportunity, and risk. Its brain, though small by your standards, processes complex information about wind direction, escape routes, and the subtle body language of potential prey. The truth about these Mesozoic predators is far more nuanced than the savage beasts of popular imagination. Allosaurus lives in a world where cooperation often trumps aggression, where intelligence matters more than brute force, and where successful hunting requires the same patience and strategy that you might apply to any complex problem in your own life. Evidence suggests these apex predators may have hunted in coordinated groups, working together with the sophisticated communication systems of modern wolves or lions. Imagine the scene: several Allosaurus spread out across a valley, using subtle vocalizations and body language to coordinate their approach to a herd of giant herbivores. One creates a distraction, while others position themselves along likely escape routes. It's a chess game played with living pieces across a board of ancient forests and meadows. Their prey, meanwhile, has evolved its own remarkable strategies for survival. The herbivores of this era are far from helpless victims. Stegosaurus, with its distinctive plates and spiked tail, represents one of nature's most successful experiments in defensive architecture. Those plates, once thought to be armor, are now understood to be complex thermal regulators, living solar panels that help these creatures maintain optimal body temperature in the variable climate of their world. But the real weapon of Stegosaurus is that magnificent spiked tail, called a thagomizer by scientists with a sense of humor. When threatened, these seemingly slow and lumbering creatures can pivot with surprising speed, swinging their tails in devastating arcs that can shatter bone and tear flesh. They are living fortresses, mobile castles designed by evolution to be both beautiful and deadly. As you breathe slowly and deeply, picture a moonlit scene in this ancient world. A small herd of Parasaurolophus, duck-billed dinosaurs with elaborate crests atop their heads, gathers at the edge of a quiet lake. These are the musicians of the Mesozoic era, their hollow crests functioning as natural trumpets capable of producing hauntingly beautiful sounds that carry for miles across the landscape. Listen in your imagination to their evening song, deep, resonant notes that speak of family bonds, territory boundaries, and the simple joy of being alive in a world of abundance. Each species of crested hadrosaur produces its own unique musical signature, creating symphonies of communication that connect communities across vast distances. Parents call to their young, mates announce their presence, and sentries warn of approaching danger, all through music that predates human civilization by 75 million years. The family life of these herbivores reveals intelligence and emotional complexity that would seem familiar to any parent. Maiasaura, whose name means good mother lizard, builds elaborate nests in colonial rookeries, creating communities of dozens of families, all raising their young together. The adults take turns standing guard, while others forage, sharing the responsibilities of protection and childcare in ways that speak to deep social bonds and cooperative intelligence. Baby hadrosaurs hatch with eyes wide open and legs ready to run, but they remain in their nests for weeks while their parents bring them food and teach them the essential skills of survival. The sight of an adult Maiasaura gently carrying fresh vegetation to its offspring or using its body to shield them from the hot midday sun reveals a tenderness that bridges the vast gulf of time between their world and yours. But not all relationships in this ancient ecosystem are about predator and prey. Some of the most fascinating discoveries in paleontology reveal unexpected partnerships that challenge our assumptions about dinosaur behavior. Small, agile dinosaurs called Compsognathus often lived alongside the giants, possibly picking parasites from their skin in relationships similar to those between modern oxpeckers and African buffalo. These tiny dinosaurs, no larger than chickens, possessed remarkable intelligence packed into their small skulls. They were the problem solvers of their world, using tools, working in coordinated groups, and displaying behaviors that suggest complex social structures. Watching them dart between the feet of enormous sauropods, their movements quick and purposeful, you see the ancestors of some of the most intelligent creatures that would ever walk the earth. The Cretaceous period, following the Jurassic, brings even more sophisticated examples of dinosaur intelligence and social behavior. Triceratops, with its magnificent three-horned skull and enormous bony frill, represents the pinnacle of herbivore defensive evolution. But recent discoveries suggest these creatures were far more than mobile fortresses. They were caring parents and complex social beings. Fossil evidence reveals that Triceratops lived in large herds, with adults forming protective circles around their young when threatened. Their frills, once thought to be purely defensive, were likely also used for display and communication, flashing with colors and patterns that conveyed information about age, health, and social status. They were living billboards, advertising their fitness and intentions to both rivals and potential mates. Among the predators of the Cretaceous period, Tyrannosaurus rex stands as perhaps the most perfectly adapted hunter ever to walk the earth. But the real T-Rex was far different from the clumsy monster often portrayed in popular culture. This was a precision instrument of predation, with keen intelligence, excellent vision, extraordinary hearing, and a sense of smell that could detect carrion from miles away. Recent research suggests that T-Rex was as much a caring parent as it was a fearsome predator. Evidence of adults bringing food to their young, protecting them from rivals, and teaching them hunting techniques reveals a creature capable of complex emotional bonds. The terrible lizard king had a tender side, expressing affection and devotion that spans the millions of years between their world and yours. As these ancient ecosystems settled into their nighttime rhythms, predators and prey alike settle into the rhythms of sleep and rest that connect all living things across time. The hunters dream their hunting dreams, while the herbivores rest in the security of their herds, always alert for danger, but finding peace in the presence of their families and communities. In the gentle darkness, with only the soft sounds of nocturnal creatures stirring in the undergrowth, you can sense the profound truth that emerges from these ancient relationships. Survival was never just about strength or savagery, but about intelligence, cooperation, and the bonds that connect individuals to their communities and their environment. The Mesozoic world was a place of breathtaking beauty and complex relationships, where creatures great and small found their place in the endless dance of life and death, predator and prey, parent and child. It was a world on the verge of discovering something even more remarkable: the conquest of the sky itself, and the evolutionary innovations that would echo through time to reach your own modern world. As these ancient ecosystems settled into their nighttime rhythms, small dinosaurs with strange new features were beginning to experiment with possibilities that would literally lift them above the terrestrial struggles of their earthbound kin, carrying them toward a revolution that would change the very definition of what it meant to be a dinosaur.
The asteroid, which scientists now call the Chicxulub impactor, arrives without warning in the space between one heartbeat and the next. Picture the scene as it streaks through the atmosphere above what is now the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. For a brief moment, it creates a second sun in the sky, a brilliant fireball that outshines the day itself. Then comes the impact. The collision releases more energy in a single instant than all the volcanoes on Earth have produced in recorded history. The asteroid vaporizes completely, along with thousands of cubic kilometers of rock from the impact site. A crater 150 kilometers wide and 20 kilometers deep opens in the Earth like a wound, sending shock waves rippling outward at supersonic speeds. The very ground becomes liquid, flowing like waves in an ocean made of stone. Within minutes, the sky above the impact site is filled with debris traveling at ballistic speeds. Molten rock droplets, chunks of vaporized stone, fragments of the asteroid itself. This ejecta rains down across North America like a storm of fire, igniting forests and grasslands in an inferno that can be seen from space. Animals caught in the open have no shelter from this deadly hail of superheated rock. But the immediate devastation is only the beginning. The impact has thrown so much debris into the atmosphere that it begins to fall back to Earth as a global rain of fire. Imagine the entire planet experiencing a brief but intense period of radiant heating, as if the surface of the Earth has become the inside of an oven. The sky glows red hot, and temperatures rise to levels that would kill any large animal exposed to the open air. Then comes the darkness. The same debris that created the rain of fire now forms a thick, impenetrable cloud that blocks out the sun. The Earth, which has been warming from the initial heating, now begins to cool rapidly as no sunlight can penetrate the shroud of dust and smoke that envelops the planet. This is the nuclear winter effect, but on a scale that dwarfs any human-caused catastrophe. In this artificial twilight, the foundations of life begin to collapse. Plants, which have been the base of every food chain for hundreds of millions of years, begin to die as photosynthesis becomes impossible. The darkness lasts for months, perhaps years, turning the entire planet into a cold, sterile wasteland where the sun is nothing more than a dim orange glow, barely visible through the perpetual overcast. The herbivorous dinosaurs, those gentle giants who had ruled the Earth through their sheer size and peaceful disposition, find themselves in an impossible situation. The plants they depend on are dying, and their massive bodies require enormous amounts of food each day just to survive. A single adult triceratops needs to consume hundreds of pounds of vegetation daily, but now there are only dead and dying plants scattered across a landscape that looks more like the surface of an alien world than the lush paradise it had been just months before. Watch as the great herds begin to break apart, the social bonds that had sustained them for millions of years dissolving under the pressure of starvation. Individual animals wander alone through the gray wasteland, their massive forms growing gaunt as they search desperately for any remaining vegetation. The sounds of their distress calls echo across empty landscapes, mournful bellows that speak of confusion, hunger, and the slow realization that their world has fundamentally changed.
The predators face their own terrible mathematics. Even if they could catch the weakening herbivores, there are not enough of them to sustain the complex predator-prey relationships that had evolved over millions of years. T-Rex, that magnificent apex predator, finds itself in a world where its prey is disappearing and its own massive energy requirements become a liability rather than an asset. But the asteroid impact, devastating as it was not acting alone. The Earth was already under stress from another catastrophic event that had been building for thousands of years. In what is now India, a series of massive volcanic eruptions called the Deccan Traps had been pouring lava and toxic gases into the atmosphere for millennia. These eruptions, some of the largest in Earth's history, had already begun to alter the planet's climate and poison its ecosystems, even before the asteroid struck. The combination of these two catastrophes, the immediate devastation of the impact and the ongoing poisoning from volcanic gases, created a perfect storm of extinction. Carbon dioxide and sulfur compounds from the volcanism acidified the oceans, making life impossible for marine reptiles like plesiosaurs and mosasaurs. The complex marine food webs that had supported giant sea creatures for millions of years collapsed in a matter of years. Yet even in this darkest chapter of Earth's history, life finds ways to endure. Small mammals, which had lived in the shadows of the dinosaurs for over 100 million years, discover that their size is now an advantage rather than a limitation. They can survive on smaller amounts of food, shelter in burrows and caves, and maintain their body temperature more efficiently than the giants around them. Some dinosaurs, too, find ways to survive the catastrophe. The smaller theropods, especially those that had already evolved the ability to fly, possess several crucial advantages. Birds can migrate vast distances to find remaining food sources. Their high metabolisms allow them to survive brief periods of starvation, and their ability to eat seeds and insects gives them access to food sources that remain available even in the post-impact world. Picture a small early bird, perhaps an ancestor of modern waterfowl, huddled on the shore of a lake that has turned gray with ash. Its feathers provide insulation against the unnatural cold, and its keen eyesight allows it to spot the seeds and small creatures that represent the difference between survival and extinction. In its genes lie the keys to a future that will eventually see dinosaurs reclaim the skies of a recovered world. The extinction process was not uniform or immediate. In some parts of the world, particularly in the southern hemisphere, the effects were less severe, and some populations of dinosaurs may have survived for thousands of years after the initial impact. But the complex ecosystems that had supported the great diversity of Mesozoic life were irreparably damaged, and one by one the remaining populations dwindled and disappeared. The last non-avian dinosaurs probably died alone, the final representatives of lineages that had flourished for millions of years. Perhaps it was a solitary triceratops searching for vegetation in a landscape where nothing grew, or a pack of velociraptors whose social bonds could not overcome the simple mathematics of starvation. Their deaths marked the end of an era, but not the end of the dinosaur story. As the years passed and the dust finally settled, the Earth began its slow recovery. Plants returned first, growing from seeds that had remained dormant in the soil, or sprouting from spores carried on the wind from distant refugia where some vegetation had managed to survive. The skies cleared gradually, allowing sunlight to warm the planet once again and restart the great cycles of photosynthesis that power all complex life. Into this recovering world came the survivors, the small mammals, the birds, the crocodiles, the turtles, the fish, and countless other groups that had managed to endure the catastrophe. They found themselves inheritors of a planet that had been swept clean of its former rulers, a world full of empty ecological niches waiting to be filled by whatever forms life might evolve to occupy them. The mammals, liberated from the competitive pressure of giant dinosaurs, began to diversify rapidly into forms both familiar and strange. Some remained small and secretive, as they had been during the Mesozoic, but others began to experiment with larger sizes and new lifestyles. The age of giants was not over. It was simply changing hands. But the most remarkable survivors were the birds, for they carried within their genes and in their very bodies the living legacy of dinosaurs. Every feature that makes a bird remarkable, their intelligence, their complex social behaviors, their beautiful songs, their ability to navigate vast distances, their caring parental instincts, these are all dinosaur traits, preserved and refined through the crucible of extinction and survival. As the Paleocene epoch dawned and life began to flourish once again in the post-impact world, the descendants of dinosaurs were already beginning to reclaim their place in the ecosystems of Earth. They had learned to sing new songs, to build new kinds of nests, to explore new ways of being dinosaurs in a world that had been transformed by fire and ice and time. The Great Extinction was not the end of the dinosaur story, but rather its most dramatic transformation. A reminder that life's greatest strength lies not in its ability to remain unchanged, but in its endless capacity to adapt, survive, and discover new ways to flourish even in the face of seemingly impossible challenges.
As your breathing settles into the gentle rhythm of approaching sleep, let your awareness drift to the sounds that surround you in this moment, perhaps the distant call of a bird outside your window, or the rustle of wings in nearby trees. These sounds carry with them a secret that would astound the paleontologists who first discovered dinosaur bones in the rocky badlands of the American West. The age of dinosaurs never ended. It simply learned to fly. Every bird you have ever seen, from the tiny hummingbird hovering at your garden flowers to the majestic eagle soaring high above mountain peaks, is a living dinosaur, a direct descendant of those magnificent creatures whose footsteps once shook the earth. The robin that sings outside your bedroom window each morning is more closely related to Tyrannosaurus rex than T-Rex was to Stegosaurus. In the space of a single human lifetime, science has rewritten the story of extinction and survival, revealing that the dinosaurs' greatest triumph was not their dominance of the Mesozoic world, but their successful transition into the modern era. Picture the first dawn after the Great Extinction, when the dust had finally settled and sunlight began to penetrate the clearing atmosphere. In the branches of recovering trees, small feathered creatures were already singing the songs that would echo through the next 66 million years. These early birds, having survived the catastrophe that claimed their giant cousins, carried within their genes the entire legacy of dinosaur evolution. Their intelligence, their complex behaviors, their remarkable adaptability, and their capacity for beauty. The story of how we came to understand this connection is itself a tale of scientific wonder. For nearly 2 centuries after the first dinosaur fossils were discovered, paleontologists saw birds and dinosaurs as entirely separate groups. Birds were warm-blooded, intelligent, caring parents who could fly. Dinosaurs were cold-blooded, stupid, lumbering reptiles that had failed to adapt to changing conditions. The two seemed as different as any two groups of animals could be. But in the 1960s, a paleontologist named John Ostrom discovered something that would change everything. In the rocks of Montana, he found the fossilized remains of a small dinosaur he named Deinonychus, the terrible claw. This creature was clearly built for speed and agility, with long legs for running, grasping hands for holding prey, and a large brain relative to its body size. Most remarkably, it possessed a sickle-shaped claw on each foot that could be held off the ground while running and deployed like a switchblade when attacking. Deinonychus revealed that at least some dinosaurs were active, intelligent predators more similar to modern mammals and birds than to sluggish reptiles. Ostrom began to notice other similarities between certain dinosaurs and birds: the structure of their hip bones, the arrangement of their ribs, the way their skulls were constructed. He proposed what was then a radical idea, that birds were not just related to dinosaurs, but were actually dinosaurs themselves, the last surviving branch of a once mighty family tree. As you rest in the quiet of this moment, imagine the excitement and controversy that followed Ostrom's proposal. The scientific community was divided between those who embraced this new understanding and those who couldn't accept that the delicate creatures singing in their backyards were the direct descendants of fearsome predators like Allosaurus and Velociraptor. The debate might have continued for decades, but then came a series of discoveries that settled the question once and for all. In the fossil-rich beds of Liaoning Province in China, paleontologists began uncovering dinosaurs preserved with unprecedented detail. The fine-grained sediments had captured not just bones, but also the outlines of soft tissues, including the unmistakable impressions of feathers. Sinosauropteryx, Caudipteryx, Microraptor. One by one, these discoveries revealed that many dinosaurs had been feathered, and that the transition from earthbound predator to aerial master had been gradual and beautiful.
The evidence became overwhelming. Dinosaurs and birds shared more than 150 anatomical features, from the hollow bones that made flight possible to the complex respiratory system that allows birds to extract oxygen more efficiently than any other vertebrate. The wishbone that you might pull apart at a holiday dinner was first evolved by dinosaurs as a strengthening strut to support the powerful flight muscles. The care that birds show to their young, building elaborate nests, feeding their offspring, teaching them to fly, these behaviors all have their roots in dinosaur parenting strategies that evolved more than 100 million years ago. But the connections run even deeper than anatomy and behavior. Modern techniques for analyzing ancient DNA and proteins have revealed the genetic similarities between birds and their dinosaur ancestors. The genes that control feather development in modern birds are nearly identical to those that must have controlled feather formation in Archaeopteryx and other feathered dinosaurs. The biological mechanisms that allow birds to navigate during migration, to process visual information with extraordinary speed, and to produce their complex songs are all inherited from their dinosaur lineage. Consider the intelligence that shines in a crow's eyes as it uses tools to extract insects from tree bark or solves multi-step puzzles that would challenge a young child. This intelligence is not a recent innovation, but an ancient gift, passed down through millions of years from dinosaur ancestors who also used tools, solved problems, and navigated complex social relationships. When you watch a flock of geese flying in perfect V formation across an autumn sky, you are witnessing organizational skills that were first developed by dinosaurs coordinating group hunts in Mesozoic forests. The songs that fill the pre-dawn darkness with beauty and meaning are perhaps the most remarkable legacy of all. Recent research has revealed that the syrinx, the complex vocal organ that allows birds to produce their varied calls and songs, evolved from simpler sound-producing structures that existed in non-avian dinosaurs. The hauntingly beautiful songs of modern birds are elaborations on vocalizations that once echoed through ancient landscapes, serving the same fundamental purposes: attracting mates, defending territory, maintaining family bonds, and sharing information about food sources and dangers. As your mind drifts toward sleep, imagine the moment when this realization first dawned on the scientific community. The creatures they had been studying as symbols of extinction and failure were actually the ancestors of one of the most successful groups of animals on Earth today. There are nearly 10,000 species of birds alive in your time, more than twice as many species as there are mammals. Birds have colonized every continent, including Antarctica, and have adapted to virtually every possible lifestyle, from tiny hummingbirds that hover like helicopters to penguins that fly through water instead of air.
The diversity of modern birds reflects the same evolutionary creativity that made the Mesozoic era the age of dinosaurs. In the Arctic tern, which migrates from Arctic to Antarctic and back each year, a round trip of over 44,000 miles, we see the same wandering spirit that might have driven herds of hadrosaurs across Cretaceous landscapes. In the intelligence of parrots, which can learn hundreds of words and use them in context, we glimpse the problem-solving abilities that made troodontids some of the most successful dinosaurs of their time. Even the social structures of modern birds echo their dinosaur heritage.
emperor penguins huddling together in Antarctic blizzards, taking turns moving from the cold exterior to the warm center of the group, display the same cooperative behaviors that allowed dinosaurs to survive and thrive for 165 million years. The elaborate courtship displays of birds of paradise, with their brilliant colors and complex dances, are direct descendants of the display behaviors that feathered dinosaurs used to attract mates and establish social hierarchies. The nests that birds build today, from the simple scrapes of shorebirds to the elaborate hanging baskets woven by orioles, all have their origins in dinosaur nesting behaviors. Some of the most sophisticated nest builders among dinosaurs were the oviraptorids, whose name ironically means egg thieves because the first fossils were found near nests that scientists initially thought they were raiding. We now know they were actually protecting their own eggs, sitting on their nests with their feathered arms spread wide to provide warmth and protection, just as their bird descendants do today. The parental care that characterizes modern birds, the tireless feeding of nestlings, the protection from predators, the teaching of essential survival skills, all of these behaviors were inherited from dinosaur ancestors. Maiacera, whose name means good mother lizard, built colonial nesting sites where hundreds of families raised their young together, with adults sharing the responsibilities of protection and food gathering. This cooperative parenting strategy is still used by many bird species today, from colonial seabirds to communal nesting species like the sociable weaver. But perhaps the most profound realization is that the extinction event that ended the Mesozoic era was not really an ending at all, but a transition. The dinosaurs didn't disappear, they transformed. They traded their massive ground-shaking bodies for the freedom of flight. They exchanged their roles as terrestrial giants for mastery of the sky. They discovered that survival sometimes requires not growing larger and stronger, but becoming smaller, more adaptable, more intelligent. In every bird that visits your garden, perches on your windowsill, or soars overhead, you are witnessing the continuation of the greatest evolutionary success story our planet has ever known. These are not just birds. They are modern dinosaurs, carrying within their genes and behaviors the accumulated wisdom of 165 million years of dinosaur evolution. They have survived ice ages and volcanic catastrophes, continental drift and climate change, always finding new ways to adapt and thrive. The morning chorus that greets each dawn is actually a dinosaur symphony, with each species adding its voice to a song that has been playing continuously for tens of millions of years. The robin's cheerful melody, the hawk's fierce cry, the owl's haunting call, these are all dinosaur voices, evolved and refined over eons of time, but still fundamentally connected to the sounds that once filled Mesozoic forests and plains. As you settle into sleep, let this knowledge fill you with wonder rather than sadness. The age of dinosaurs never ended. It simply learned to sing. Every time you see a bird in flight, you are witnessing one of evolution's greatest triumphs. Watching a dinosaur that has mastered not just survival, but the art of soaring above the very challenges that once threatened to destroy its lineage entirely. The dinosaur's legacy lives on in ways both seen and hidden, in the flash of wings at your bird feeder, and in the complex neural pathways that allow birds to navigate by stars and magnetic fields. They survive in the hollow bones that make flight possible, and in the four-chambered hearts that pump blood with extraordinary efficiency. They persist in the devoted parenting behaviors that ensure each new generation receives the skills and knowledge needed for survival. In the quiet moments before sleep claims you, listen for the distant call of a night bird or the rustle of wings in darkness. These sounds carry with them the voices of the past, the echoes of ancient forests where dinosaurs first learned to sing, where feathers first caught the light, where the future of life on Earth was written in the genetic code of creatures that refused to accept extinction as an ending. The dinosaurs never really left us. They simply transformed themselves into something more beautiful, more adaptable, more capable of surviving whatever challenges the future might bring. In teaching us that evolution is not about the survival of the strongest, but about the success of the most adaptable, they offer us a lesson that extends far beyond paleontology into the realm of hope itself. Every bird is a miracle, a living reminder that endings can become beginnings, that catastrophe can become transformation, and that life's greatest gift is not its ability to remain unchanged, but its infinite capacity to become something new while honoring everything it has been. In their songs and flight, in their beauty and intelligence, the dinosaurs continue their reign, not as the terrible lizards of ancient nightmares, but as the winged poetry of our modern world, writing new verses in the endless song of life on Earth. Rest now, knowing that the age of dinosaurs continues in every dawn chorus, in every migration, in every nest built with ancient wisdom and modern hope. The thunder lizards have become the singers of morning, and their empire of sky stretches infinite and eternal above your sleeping dreams.